Друга ракета на Васильковський аеродром.
Jesus. It's terrible.
Мариупольского аэропорта.
Итак, сделали 2 захода. Или даже 3. И теперь начинают бомбить. Это Су-25 грачи. Начинает работать ПВО. Это ПВО в виде автоматов. Он уже дым какой-то идет.
Well, unfortunately, this is what we're dealing with right now.
Штук 20 пролетіло. Не видно українського герба. Точно російські. Прямо над хатами. Прямо ось над хатами літають, падли. Полетіли в сторону аеропорта. Бомблять аеропорт.
These helicopters are actually evading ground-to-air missiles. I'm rolling up a blunt right now so I can explain to you guys why the stock market's green today. If you don't already know, I'll explain what I believe the reasoning for the stock market being green today. And it's not because war is good for our stocks. It's not because war is good for our economy. I noticed today some YouTubers posting certain things about, you know, this war in Russia, almost making it seem as if we should feel guilty for buying puts on the SPY and other, you know, calls on the VIX and the ETFs that run along against the SPY and the NASDAQ and the Dow Jones and everything. But we are just tiny retail investors. We did not cause the problem. We are the cure. We are the solution, as my friend Wolfie likes to say. None of us want this war to happen, but we're completely powerless to stop it. So we've got to go along for the ride, whether we like it or not.
Hey, Marcel, my bad if you already brought this up. How do you feel about Taiwan? What do you think they're going to do?
China's going to invade Taiwan soon. There was 8 Chinese jets flown over Taiwan today, which Taiwan had to fly up and scramble to get them out. I think that's China is testing Taiwan.
You said there were boats there in like 2 a.m.
Of the Russians, that information from the Ukrainian presidential advisor. They control that airstrip. Now, it's not far from the capital. We're now hearing unconfirmed reports that paratroopers have landed on that airstrip, and there are reports that the Ukrainian artillery is opening fire, and there's a battle going on right now at that airstrip. Now, there's also information, prior to this happening, there were reports on Twitter that Ilyushin 76 planes, these are large troop carriers, 18 of them flew from Russia, a Russian airbase, heading this way, and it would appear quite possibly that the two are interlinked, that the paratroopers were on board these planes. We've looked into what the capabilities of the Ilyushin 76 are, and the capabilities apparently something like 140 troops could be carried on each of those aircraft.
You're signing $19 billion worth of agreements for this year.
Look at the yields. The 10-year yield is hovering dangerously close to 2%. I'm sorry, to $2. And every time it gets to $2, we get much closer to a yield inversion between the 30-year and the 10-year. The 5-year is practically inverted with the 10-year at this point, and the 2-year is quickly catching up. If you're unaware, when a yield becomes inverted and say a 2-year yield is more expensive than a 5-year, or the 5-year is more expensive than a 10-year, 20 out of 20 times that this has happened in the past, it has signaled a recession, if not a depression. So this is an email that I got from the United States Department of the Treasury. I've signed up to get email updates, of course. And the U.S. Treasury announced unprecedented and expansive sanctions against Russia, imposing swift and severe economic costs. The top 10 Russian financial institutions are now under United States restrictions. All right, they're going to impose major sanctions and major costs against them. Sounds almost to me like there's a bit of an emergency. What would you say, Cash? You think there's a fucking emergency going on? Because I'd say so. Where's my guys in the Discord at? How we doing?
Hey, I have one more question. If you talked about it, my bad, but not blue.
What's up, brother?
Bring back.
The United States took significant and unprecedented action to respond to Russia's further invasion of Ukraine by imposing severe economic costs that will have both immediate and long-term effects on the Russian economy and financial system. The things they're not telling us, though, directly here is that these are going to have huge negative results, and this is going to be very bad for the economies of all European countries and American countries. You know, this is not going to be good for anybody. They go on to say that the U.S. Department of Treasury's Office of Foreign Assets Control today imposed expansive economic measures in partnership with allies and partners that target the core infrastructure of the Russian financial system, including all of Russia's financial institutions and the ability of state-owned and private entities to raise capital, and further bars Russia from the global financial system. This action targets nearly 80% of all banking assets in Russia and will have deep and long-lasting effect on the Russian economy and financial system.
The only caveat to that, though, is, boss, I mean, the first round of sanctions that they hit, then they end up purchasing a metric shit ton of oil from them on the same day. It makes no sense.
It doesn't. It almost makes as much sense as quantitative easing and tapering at the same time and raising interest rates.
Yeah. Touche.
Yeah. Maybe things are a little backwards right now.
3 weeks before rate hikes and we hit a war. Coincidence?
Coincidence or what? So they say that today the Treasury is taking action against these institutions and almost 90 financial institutions, banks, hedge funds, etc., around the world, mostly related to Russia. And the Treasury is also sanctioning additional Russian elites and their family members and imposing additional new prohibitions related to new debt of equity, major Russian state-owned enterprises, and large privately owned financial institutions. These actions are specifically designed to impose immediate costs and disrupt and degrade future economic activity, isolate Russia from international finance and commerce, and degrade the Kremlin's future ability to project power. Again, I'm really happy to see that they're doing something, but at this point in the game, these sanctions are harming European countries and countries in the Americas just as much, if not more so, than they're harming Russia. Russian companies American companies have moved their funds out of Russian companies for this very reason alone. As of today, February 24th, 2022, I got an email at 1:13 p.m. Central Time from the U.S. Department of the Treasury regarding this immediate release, unprecedented and expansive sanctions against Russia, imposing swift and severe economic costs. There's another that they sent on the 22nd of February, which was to impose immediate economic costs in response to action in Donetsk and Luhansk People's Republics, the DNR and the LNR. All right. So they're freezing funds in Russia and making it so that these funds are no longer valid and cannot be used around the world. So is the members are no longer going to accept the collateral from these Russian financial system stocks and investments. So this is good for America and for the world in a sense, but it's a double-edged sword. It cuts both ways. And I highly doubt it's going to make a goddamn bit of difference to Putin. If anything, these sanctions and basically removing Russia from the SWIFT banking system will further enable and give Putin the willingness and ability to tread further into Europe, such as Poland, Lithuania, Estonia, other key elements that Vladimir Putin and Russia that used to formerly belong to the USSR are necessary in order to provide a barrier and a boundary where NATO and America cannot put weapons right on the border of Russia. It makes sense in the sense that we would feel very uneasy if Russia was still putting nukes in Cuba or in Venezuela. And it's the same situation that Russia and Putin are feeling on the other hand here. As of 1:17 p.m., 5 minutes after the first executive order, we got another one that says the U.S. Treasury targets Belarusian support for Russian invasion of Ukraine. As part of the United States' serious and expansive response to Russia's further invasion of Ukraine, the U.S. Department of Treasury's Office of Foreign Asset Control is sanctioning 24 individuals from Belarus and entities due to Belarus's support for and the facilitation of the invasion of Ukraine. All right. So only the top elite are going to be affected here. You guys see that? In Belarus. They say, having already sacrificed its legitimacy to suppress the democratic aspirations of the Belarusian people, the Lukashenko regime is now jeopardizing Belarus's sovereignty by supporting Russia's further invasion of Ukraine, said Janet Yellen, the United States Secretary of Treasury. Treasury continues to disrupt Belarus's military and financial capabilities through targeted sanctions. Further, due to the interconnectedness between the two countries, the actions Treasury took against Russia today will impose severe economic pain on the Lukashenko regime.
So, boss, they did not remove them from SWIFT. They made all of these other moves, but they did not remove them from SWIFT because they felt like it was going to be much more catastrophic to the European nations if they did that.
Okay, thank you for the correction. This is all brand new information that just is happening right now at this very moment. So thank you very much for correcting me. I believe you are correct. They're threatening to remove Russia from the SWIFT, the international banking procedures and regulations here, but as of yet they have not done so. So that is a good sign. If they were to do that, as I said, I do think that they would give Putin much more willingness to continue to invade into countries like Poland, Lithuania, Estonia. And thank you for the correction, brother. Appreciate that. That's why I bring many people here to discuss this together, because I don't want to be the only one, you know, that's able to discuss this important information, because I am also human and I make errors as well. So thanks a bunch for that.
You're good, man.
Wall Street flees Russian assets ahead of sanctions risk. I got this at 1:30. So, excuse me. This was published on 1:37 a.m. February 24th, 2022, which is before I received this email at 1:14 and 1:13 p.m. and 1:17 p.m. from the Department of the Treasury. So Bloomberg was saying that investors sitting on unwanted Russian assets are finding the exits are rapidly closing as Western political leaders push for far-reaching penalties. This is credit default swaps. Right now, they're at their highest that they've been since 2008. This is the everything bubble. Housing, stocks, real estate. I mean, land and housing separately and together. Tech, you name it. Everything's extremely overvalued right now. UBS Group has triggered margin calls on some wealth management clients that use Russian bonds as collateral for their portfolios after marking down the value of debt issued by the country in Russia and its corporations. Rival Swiss wealth manager Pictet is also cutting the values of Russian assets in investors' and portfolios. Templeton, please mute your mic, please. Thank you very much, brother. Even Russian oil was offered at a record discount last night, and it's definitely not anymore. Ruble touched a record low. Losses were widespread in markets. $200 billion were wiped out as the ruble dove last night here in America. It was daytime, and the Russian stock market had to be halted. The benchmark MOASS Russia index closed 33% lower in Moscow, erasing $189 billion in shareholder wealth. It's the fifth most brutal one-day sell-off among 90 global equity indexes analyzed by Bloomberg. It's a pretty big deal. If you guys were unaware, the American futures here were down, and we gapped down about 2.25% overnight in the stock market. And even though we're up 1.5% today, we're still down a whole percentage point from where we were yesterday. Oh, okay, here we go. Here was our gap down. Yesterday we were over here in the morning at 432.65, collapsed in the futures overnight, where I believe the plunge protection team, Janet Yellen, the head of the plunge protection team, and Gary Gensler were either selling puts on the VIX or buying up the SPY. I believe they were selling puts in order to create a gamma ramp of futures and SPY and SPX and other NASDAQ and Dow purchases in order to increase the value of the SPX and the SPY because of those puts on the VIX. This movement here, in addition to that, because I believe this to be a lot more than just, $10 to $50 billion movement here that we had from 411.08. Can you believe that? We were down at 411 on the SPY all the way to 428 today. It was not solely on good news, because we didn't have any good news. It was on the plunge protection team saving the markets by selling puts on the VIX, in addition to UBS issuing margin calls worldwide. UBS Group triggered margin calls on wealth management clients worldwide that use Russian bonds as collateral for their portfolios. And we showed why that happened, because of the Department of the Treasury targeting Belarus the top 20 families, 20 people, and targeting the top 90 financial institutions, or should I say the top 10 Russian financial institutions and 90 financial institution subsidiaries around the world. So all that money has to go somewhere. And market makers, in order to prevent margin call, are going to put it where? In the stock market, in the SPX, in the SPY.
Charlie cut up lots of earnings after the closing bell. Just hearing right now from Monster Beverage. Fourth quarter EPS 60 cents. Estimates there were for 61 cents. Block Inc., the payment company formerly known as Squaring, reported fourth quarter net revenue of $4.08 billion. Estimates were for 4.01. Shares up now by 4.2%. Beyond Meat sees 2022 net revenue at $560 million to $620. Estimates have been for $645 million. Beyond Meat shares down now by almost 10%. Coinbase shares lower by 1.4%. Coinbase reporting revenue for the fourth
emergency
quarter, average analyst estimate. And Intuit is reaffirming its guidance, revenue guidance for
margin
the
call.
year. The guidance did miss the average analyst estimate. Shares lower, down now by 4.9%. Finally, Etsy forecast revenue for the first quarter, and that missed the average analyst
Carvana's down 15%. Intuit 4.7.
6.4%.
Etsy's up 9.8. Can you say short squeeze?
After President Biden's address, S&P ended the day with a gain of 63 points, up 1.5%. The Dow ended the session higher by 92, up 3.
Remember, we ended the day higher, but we were lower than we were at yesterday. It's still a loss.
At one point, the Dow was down 859. NASDAQ Composite Index up 436. Big swing there, up 3.35%. At the worst level, NASDAQ had been down 449 points. 10-year yield 1.95%. Spot gold now down 0.5%. 1,900 even the ounce, while West Texas Intermediate crude up 0.9%. 92.98 a barrel. Brent crude $99 a barrel, but at one point Brent was trading above 105. Stocks erasing losses to trade higher as investors found refuge in large cap American tech names. I'm Charlie Pellet. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, really appreciate that update. Well, supply chains continuing to be under stress, and our next guest has a front row seat to what's going on and the impact geopolitical tensions are having on them. We welcome Joel Hyatt. He's Chairman, CEO, co-founder at Globality. It's a global
It's definitely going to make that noise, but I don't think it's going to make that noise for Ken Griffin and fucking Melvin Capital over here. Ken Griffin's Citadel is pulling back $2 billion of money that it invested in Melvin Capital Management. Citadel Funds asked for $500 million back last month after redeeming $1 billion last year. There will be another January redemption for the rest of that $2 billion investment. So it looks like they're taking another $500 million back from Melvin. The move comes after Melvin ended 2021 with a 39% loss and fell an additional 15% more in January. This is Gabe Plotkin. And our friend Kenneth Bedpost Cordell Griffin said that Gabe fucking Plotkin was the best investor of this era. What a fucking tool. What an absolute fucking tool.
Yo, that bedpost part just killed me.
Citadel first invested in Melvin in January of 2021, when Melvin's short wagers were under attack from Reddit-inspired retail traders. Wrong! Retail bought the stock, and the market makers, hedge funds, and prime brokers could not fucking deliver. They failed to deliver. They sold synthetic shares, and they created naked shorts. Gabe Plotkin's fund sank nearly 55% in January of 2021 alone. Point72 invested $750 million in addition to the $2 billion that Citadel invested to keep their partners in crime, allegedly, afloat. Apparently, Point72 has yet to redeem their investment, but I'd say that's coming next. They're next on the chopping block.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Joel Hyatt, he's co-founder, chairman, and chief executive officer of Globality, joining us on the phone from San Francisco. I do feel like coming off the pandemic that this has been one of the major rethings.
Yes, it has. And onshoring is another topic that really came to the fore at the beginning of this pandemic. We need to bring some of these plants onshore to make it more secure supply chain.
All right, you are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Carol Massar along with Paul Sweeney, and this is Bloomberg Radio.
Can't stand their annoying ass music. You got terrible fucking music. Taking a look here, AMC ended up the day positive $1.95, $12.4% at $17.68. BBBY is up 16.79%. The VIX ended up the day down 2% after gapping up hard overnight due to the futures. But was at a high of 37.79 today, and almost exceeding its 52-week high. That's kind of a sign of things to come, if you ask me. Direxion small cap bear 3x is down almost 8%. GameStop up almost $10, 8.45%. I like that. That's pretty nice. MMAT up 12%, pretty solid, a 19-cent move. Look at the NASDAQ. Again, it was all of these ETFs, the SPX, the NASDAQ, the Russells, were pumped with money that was taken from the Russian market. They have to put it somewhere. They're not going to just hold billions and billions of dollars in cash. The reason the Russian market was down 33% is because hedge funds and market makers, prime brokers and banks pulled their funds out of these Russian collateral assets, their stocks and their bonds, and they moved them to the NASDAQ, to the SPY, to the Russell. It's as simple as that. Ocugen looks like it's down 2.5%. It's a heavily shorted meme stock as well. TQQQ up almost 10%, opposite of the S, which is the short. Look at this range, the high and the low. That's a pretty hefty range there as well. Looking at the Russell and the SPX, I do not see tomorrow being a bullish day when we know exactly where all this money came from. So yeah, if you didn't know, there's margin calls going around worldwide right now from UBS due to these sanctions against Russia. This is going to continue to affect markets. I do suspect, unfortunately, don't hate me for saying this, that meme stocks will trend downwards in the short-term future because the markets will probably continue to bleed off. So I hope I'm wrong, but I highly believe that to be the case. And I'm not a financial advisor. None of this is financial advice. I'm just trying to provide entertainment and some education if you find any of it educational. Please drop a like, drop a subscribe. It's my first video on Rumble, as a matter of fact. Decided to start streaming on Rumble as well. So if you like it, drop a Rumble, subscribe. I'm going to be doing a lot less YouTube with the recent changes that are happening. I'm not too happy with the censorship that's going on in YouTube, so if you would mind, please drop a like over on the Rumble stream as well. I'll drop that in 8chat, see if you guys can share that on YouTube for me. Somebody drop that in the YouTube chat because I don't have it open, please. According to the SEC, amendments to Clearing Agency Model Risk Management Framework, FICC 2022-001 and NSCC 2022-001 and DTC 2022-001 are all effective immediately. We're going to have to go do some investigation into the Clearing Agency Model Risk Management Framework. These filings are all bullish for investors and definitely not for market makers. So it is a good sign. I will leave you with that I do think that that's a good sign.
Reporting them orders.
Dropping the orders. So yeah, between new regulations that are, again, they're not created to help us, but they're created to prevent a situation like this from ever happening again. We've got to use what we can to our advantage. We've got to be aware of the sanctions and the situations and the movement of money that's happening. And we've got to be aware of the macroeconomic and global picture, because that's what this is all going to rely, is all going to be based around. AMC and GameStop, these beam stocks, are not just going to run for fun. They're not going to run for fun. These stocks are only going to move upwards in parabolic fashion when the market crash happens, in my opinion. And I believe that the Janet Yellen and the plunge protection team stopped a 13% loss on the SPY on January 26th, 2022 by selling $50 billion worth of puts on the SPY. I mean, on the VIX, in order to create a gamma ramp on the SPX and the SPY. In addition, they've done that many times since, and it's only February 24th, 2022 as of this recording, as of this live stream. So keep that in mind when you see the market moving downwards, trending downwards, time after time after time, for the last 2 months nearly now.
Why not Section 2 directly?
I'm sorry, can you?
Sir, India is a major defense partner of the United States. Is India fully with you on the issue of Ukraine and Russia?
Does the Defense Department of the United
Sir,
States?
India is one of your major defense partners. Is India fully in sync with the United States on Russia?
We're in consultation with India today. We haven't resolved that completely.
One more question.
Okay, thank you all very much. Thank you.
Or what's called SWIFT, the International Banking System, or other sanctions at your disposal. Respectfully, sir, what more are you waiting for?
Specifically, the sanctions we've imposed exceed SWIFT. The sanctions we imposed exceed anything that's ever been done. The sanctions we imposed have generated 2/3 of the world joining us. They are profound sanctions. Let's have a conversation in another month or so to see if they're working.
Yes. In another month of bombings
Zelensky
and attacks.
What's the risk that we are watching the beginning of another Cold War, and is there now a complete rupture in U.S. and Russian relations?
There is a complete rupture right now in U.S.-Russian relations if they continue on this path that they're on. And in terms of the Cold War, that depends. You have the vast majority of the rest of the world in total opposition to what he's doing, from Asia to South America to Europe to around the world. And so it's going to be a cold day for Russia. The idea, you don't see a whole lot of people coming to his defense.
Are you, if I could follow up, sir, are you urging China to help isolate Russia? Are you urging China to help isolate Russia?
I'm not prepared to comment on that at the moment. it's a large conflict already. The way we're going to ensure it's not going to aspire to a larger conflict is by providing all the forces needed in the Eastern European nations that are members of NATO. NATO is more united than it's ever been, and I have no plans to talk to Wall Street Journal, Tarina.
Mr. President, you didn't mention SWIFT in your sanctions that you announced. Is there a reason why the U.S. Isn't doing that? Is there a disagreement?
On the eastern boundaries of Europe, and stronger.
There was a portion in the questioning
Speak with President Putin at this point, and what interactions have you had with the Russian president?
that I really wanted to hear. I want to find it again.
No one expected the sanctions.
Economically painful is it going to get for people in this country? And I do have a question.
First of all, there's no doubt.
Talking about where he said yes.
Nuclear power.
Yeah, but could you hold off for a moment on talking? Because I got to turn the volume up.
And markets can respond all over the world. So there's no doubt about that. Number one. Number two, the notion that this is going to last a long time is highly unlikely as long as we continue to stay resolved in imposing the sanctions we're going to impose on Russia, period. What's the next question? I'm sorry.
The next question is, did you underestimate Putin, and would you still describe him the way that you did in the summer as a worthy adversary?
At the time, he was, I made it clear as an adversary, and I said he was worthy. I didn't underestimate him. And I've read most of everything he's written. Did you read it? I shouldn't say, I'm not a wise guy. You heard the speech he made, almost an hour's worth of speech of why he was going into Ukraine. He has much larger ambitions in Ukraine. He wants to, in fact, reestablish the former Soviet Union. That's what this is about. And I think that his ambitions are completely contrary to the place where the rest of the world has arrived.
Here comes a hot question regarding on if Putin's going to invade other parts of Europe, and watch the way the microphone is taken away from the person asking the question and Biden's response.
You're confident that these devastating sanctions are going to be as devastating as Russian missiles and bullets and tanks?
Yes, Russian bullets, missiles, and tanks in Ukraine. Yes, I am.
President Biden, if sanctions cannot stop President Putin, what penalty can?
I didn't say sanctions couldn't stop him.
You've been talking about the threat of these sanctions for several weeks now.
Yes, but the threat of the sanctions and imposing the sanctions and seeing the effect of the sanctions are two different things. They're two different things. And we're now he's going to begin to see the effect of the sanctions.
Did he rip one?
And what will that do? How will that change his mindset here, given he's
because
attacking
it will so
Ukraine
weaken his country that he'll have to make a very, very difficult choice as to whether to continue to move toward being a second-rate power or, in fact, respond.
You said in recent weeks that big nations cannot bluff when it comes to something like this. You recently said that the idea of personally sanctioning President Putin was on the table. Is that a step that you're prepared to take? And if
It's not a bluff, it's on the table.
Sanctioning President Putin?
Yes.
Why not sanction him today, sir? Why not sanction him today?
That's a good question. Answer.
Mr. President, if I can, you detailed some severe and swift new sanctions today and said the impact it will have over time. But given the full-scale invasion, given that you are not pursuing disconnecting Russia from what's called SWIFT, the international banking system, or other sanctions at your disposal, respectfully, sir, what more are you waiting for?
Specifically, with the sanctions we've imposed exceed SWIFT. The sanctions we imposed exceed anything that's ever been done. The sanctions we imposed have generated 2/3 of the world joining us. They are profound sanctions. Let's have a conversation.
Second largest
Countries, he will
I feel
protect our NATO
as if there was some parts removed here. Was this edited? Hang on, let me go back into the Discord and find out.
We will make sure of that. Putin will be a pariah on the international stage. Any nation, counting as Russia's naked aggression.
Regardless. Let's move on. 10-year yield at 195.
For joining us, Gina Martin Adams. She's Chief Equity Strategist, Bloomberg Intelligence, on the phone from New Jersey. When her research comes out on the Bloomberg, it's a must read. All right, back to world and national news, and back to Nancy Lyons in D.C. Hey, Nance.
Thanks, Carol. That's the sound of war descending on Ukraine. It happened overnight. Russian tanks, troops, and aircraft moved into the country from 3 directions, and Russian President Vladimir Putin has made it clear his goal is to take over the government in Kyiv. The U.S. is responding by announcing new sanctions against Russia.
On that note, this is one of those situations where I say, just don't fucking dance. Have a great day, everybody. I wish you all peace and wealth.
Mm-hmm.